Hey, good morning, everybody. How we doing today? Good, good, good. Good to have you here. Hope you had a great week. If you get our weekly email, I let you know that I spent at the end of this week up in cold, windy, rainy New Jersey. Our son Jake, their crew team from West Springfield, made the nationals. So went up there to cheer them on. And before you ask, they got crushed. All right. There's a big difference between private school crew teams and public school crew teams. And he's a public school crew team guy, and it's called money. And so those private schools, they tear up the public schools pretty well. But it was great to be up there and spend some time with him and to hang out and to cheer him on. The week before that, though, I was in beautiful, warm, sunny southern Florida, which, by the way, there's a lot of New Jersey people down there too, right? And I have nothing against New Jersey. We lived there 7 years. Two of our kids were born there. We actually loved our time there. But we were down there, or I was down there with this group of gentlemen. As you can see, bald is beautiful. A couple of us have lost all of our hair, but this is a lead pastor cohort that I've been in since I think 2018. And we met for a few years, and then we took a little bit of a break, and we reconvened recently to get back together. But I love this group of guys. Honestly, I feel like the peon in this particular group, even though I'm probably the biggest guy in the group. We here at the Journey, we average about 625 people on a Sunday morning, which actually makes us a very, very large church in America. The average size church in America today is about 65 people. These guys are leading churches of 1,200 to 7,000 people on a Sunday morning. I love these guys because they don't treat me less than, right? And as we talk and we spend time together, it's interesting to me that these guys are facing like the same challenges that we face here. They're celebrating the same things that we are celebrating here. The only difference is, as I've told a few people, they just have a few more zeros beyond some of the numbers that they have than we do. But other than that, I mean, it's just an amazing time that I get to spend with these guys and hear about life and family and professionally and just kind of pray for each other and learn from each other. As I think about these guys, though, they're really skilled. And I know that if they were in the business world, that they would just be extremely successful. They have amazing leadership abilities, and I'm getting to learn from them. The difference is they're willing to risk everything because they believe in something bigger than themselves. Like these guys are really willing to risk everything in their life because they have this faith and this belief that more and more people should know Jesus, meet Jesus, and follow Jesus. And they are giving their lives to that mission. Today, we're going to continue our series, the one about Ruth, and we are going to be in Ruth chapter 3. There's a lot of stuff that happens in Ruth chapter 3, but really it is a chapter that is about risk because the people in this story believe in something bigger than themselves. Now, if you haven't been here, let me kind of give you a recap. Ruth chapter 1, at the beginning, we meet this mom, this dad, their two kids. They're in Bethlehem. There's a famine, so they move to Moab because they believe there's food there. They get there. The two boys end up meeting and marrying Moabite women. But dad and the two boys actually die there in Moab. Naomi comes back home to Bethlehem. She brings one of her daughters-in-law with her, Ruth. And then we head into Ruth chapter 2. Ruth meets a man whose name is Boaz. And they kind of have this first date. They meet, they eat together, they drink together. But then Boaz kind of ghosts Ruth. She doesn't hear from him. She doesn't send him flowers, or he doesn't send her flowers. He doesn't send her a text message. He doesn't put up smoke signals to say, hey, I'm still here. I'm still interested. The only thing that he says when they're eating together that one particular day there at the fields, he says, hey, you keep coming here and you keep working here. Ruth keeps doing that, but I'm sure internally she's probably wondering what happened. Like, I thought we had this connection. I thought there was this bond here. I thought we were going to be together, but she doesn't hear from Boaz. Like all good mother-in-laws, Naomi sticks her nose into the situation at this point, right? I'm kidding, mother-in-laws. If you're here, we love you. You're very special. Naomi jumps in like, hey, we got to put a plan together. It's time to make something happen. And so that leads us into Ruth chapter 3, starting with verse 1. One day, Naomi said to Ruth, my daughter, it's time that I found a permanent home for you so that you will be provided for. Boaz is a close relative of ours, and he's been very kind by letting you gather grain with his young women. Tonight, he will be winnowing barley at the threshing floor. Now, do as I tell you, take a bath, put on some perfume, and dress in your nicest clothes. Then go to the threshing floor, but don't let Boaz see you until he has finished eating and drinking. Be sure to notice where he lies down, then go and uncover his feet and lie down there. He will tell you what to do. I will do everything you say, Ruth replied. Here's Naomi who tells Ruth, take a bath, right? Shave your legs, get a pedi, get a mani, put on some really nice perfume, and then put on some really nice clothes. Boaz is the man for you. I've got a plan, and this is what this plan is. Now, understand, up until this point, Ruth has played the role of the grieving widow. She's not dressing nicely. She's kind of dressing as poorly as she can because that was a part of the culture in those days. If your spouse died, then you showed that you were this grieving widow. And that's exactly what she's doing here. Naomi jumps in and Naomi says, you're done being the grieving widow. Like it's time for you to find someone to marry, and Boaz is the right one for you. Again, culturally, this isn't Naomi's job. In that culture, the dad of Ruth would have taken this on. Now, we don't know anything about her father. Maybe he's still in Moab. Maybe he's dead. We're not quite sure. Naomi's husband is dead. He has passed away. And so Naomi's left to take on this role of the dad, right? So she can go and find this husband for Ruth. So she says, Ruth, here's our plan. How does Ruth respond? Verse 6. So she, this is Ruth, went down to the threshing floor that night and followed the instructions of her mother-in-law. After Boaz had finished eating and drinking and was in good spirits, he lay down at the far end of the pile of grain and went to sleep. Then Ruth came quietly and covered his feet and lay down. Around midnight, Boaz suddenly woke up and turned over. He was surprised to find a woman lying at his feet. Who are you? He asked. Seems a little frisky for date number 2, doesn't it? Let me talk a little bit about this threshing floor. These threshing floors were kind of these wide open spaces, and you'd bring in the stalks of barley. You would put them on this floor. Then you would bring these big animals, usually like oxen. They would walk over and crush the stalks. And then when the wind would blow, because these places were set up where there was wind coming through, you take a pitchfork, you'd grab the stalks, you throw it in the air. The wind would blow all the chaff away and you'd be left with the grain. That's exactly what you wanted. This is where Boaz is located. Now, as we read here in this part of our story, Boaz is celebrating the harvest being over, okay? The grain is there. We see that he's eating, and let's just be honest, he's having a couple of cocktails too, right? And not O'Doul's. He's drinking something a little bit more than that. So he ends up sleeping there on this grain pile. Now, he's probably not wasted, just so you know, but it does say he's in good spirits. He is there because he's a good businessman. He is there because he is protecting his product. And one of the main reasons was during this time of year when you would have these harvests, thieves would come in and steal the grain. At some point in time, here is Boaz asleep on this grain pile. Ruth comes in, uncovers his feet, and lays down at his feet. Now, as we read the story, it says that around midnight, he's startled. Boaz is startled. He wakes up and he realizes someone is there. So he asks that question, who are you? There's actually another piece to this that he is concerned about. Not only would thieves come in during harvest time, trying to steal your harvest, your barley, but prostitutes would come in too. A prostitute knew that many of these workers would get drunk at the end of this season, and they were, happy. And so the prostitutes would come in and say, hey, I will help you out if you pay me in this grain that you have. Boaz is sleeping. He's protecting his investment. He wakes up because something startles him. And I'm sure in his mind, he's thinking, is this a thief trying to steal my stuff? Or is this a prostitute looking for something more? So he says, who are you? But it's neither. I am your servant Ruth, she replied. Spread the corner of your covering over me, for you are my family redeemer. Boaz doesn't hear a voice he doesn't know. He hears the voice that he remembers out in the fields not too long ago. He remembers this angelic voice of Ruth, and that's exactly what he hears. But then we have Ruth making this very strange request of Boaz. And so I want to talk about both of these things here. She says, spread the corner of your covering over me. If we go back to Ruth chapter 2, Boaz is actually praying that God would take care of Ruth. Go back to Ruth chapter 2, verse 12. May the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge, reward you fully for what you have done. Boaz prays, hey, may God bless you, Ruth, because of the way that you have taken care of Naomi. May you have everything you need. May you be cared for in every way possible. Here we are in chapter 3, and what do we find Ruth is doing? Ruth is basically saying to Boaz, hey, Boaz, answer your own prayer. Why don't you take me under your wings? Now, Boaz isn't a mutant from the X-Men, okay? He is a normal guy, but when it talks about wings here, it is talking about the garment, the skirt, this cloak that people would wear. So this was really the symbolic gesture that you would make. A man would take that garment, that coat, that skirt, and put it around a woman to say, hey, I want to marry you. In our days today, it's, put a ring on the finger. For us, it's carrots. For them, it was thread count that was most important. And so you would drape this around her to say, hey, I'm going to protect you. I'm going to care for you. I'm going to love you. And yes, I want to marry you. So that's the very first part that we see here in this verse. But Ruth also asked Boaz to be the family redeemer, this goel, this Hebrew word. Joel talked about this last week, and I kind of want to recap it a little bit. The family redeemer was a male relative, and they had this cultural and social responsibility to take care of family members who were in distress. So this was an incredibly important role within a family, and it really was about trying to keep the extended family together. Let me go back and hit some of these expectations of this family redeemer. They would make sure that the family property stayed in the family. So if it got sold for some reason or given away, they would come back in and they would buy that land so the land would stay in the family. If a member had debt they had to pay, and because they couldn't pay it, they ended up being a slave to someone, then this family redeemer would come in and they would pay the debt for that particular person so that they could be free. They avenged murders. If a family member had been murdered, their job was to seek justice. And if a husband dies without a male heir for the widow, then they were expected to marry the widow. Here's Ruth, who comes to Boaz and says, I want you to be our family redeemer. Marry me. Get Naomi's land back, because they believe that Naomi's land has been taken or sold at some point, and keep this family line in place. This is Ruth's request for Boaz. But as you think about what Ruth is doing here, she is breaking every cultural norm there is. Here's a woman asking a man to marry her. Here is this Moabite woman asking a Hebrew man to marry her. Here is this young woman asking an older man to marry her. Here's this poor woman asking this rich man to marry her. She's bold. Like she's brazen here. She's like, show me that you will take care of me. Put your garment, put your skirt, put your cloak, put your wings around me, and let me know that you will make me your wife. She's taking incredible risk here. She doesn't know how Boaz is going to respond to this. He could yell at her. He could kick her out. He could have her beaten and arrested. He could have her called a prostitute. I mean, there's so many things that could have happened here, but she was willing to take that risk. And she says, "Put your wings around me and be my family redeemer." How does Boaz respond? Look at verse 10. "The Lord bless you, my daughter," Boaz exclaimed. "You are showing even more family loyalty now than you did before, for you have not gone after a younger man, whether rich or poor. Now, don't worry about a thing, my daughter. I will do what is necessary, for everyone in town knows you are a virtuous woman." I'll be honest with you. Boaz is really excited about this offer that has been given him, right? He's like, "I've seen what you've done for Naomi, but man, this is wow, this is so much greater than what you did with Naomi. And oh, by the way, you didn't go chasing after the young, rich guys with the hard rock abs. You came to the old dude, right? You came after the old dude. I really do appreciate that." There is an age difference here. Not quite Bill Belichick level, but it's still there a little bit. Yep. The thinking is that Ruth is probably in her mid to late 20s, that Boaz is probably in his 50s. Boaz probably sees this as a mismatch. Like, I can't believe this is happening to me. Maybe even sees it as a miracle. But he says, "I am in." However, he says, I'm in, but there's still work to do. Go back to verse 12 and 13. Boaz says, "But while it's true that I am one of your family redeemers, there is another man who is more closely related to you than I am. Stay here tonight, and in the morning I will talk to him. If he is willing to redeem you, very well. Let him marry you. But if he's not willing, then as surely as the Lord lives, I will redeem you myself. Now lie down here until morning." Ruth says, "Marry me." And Boaz says, "I would love to, but you need to understand there's another person in our family who kind of has dibs on you. He's a little bit closer relative to Naomi than I am. And so I need to have that conversation with him before I can make these things happen." Then Boaz says, "Stay here tonight, but in the morning I'll have that conversation with him." Verse 14. So Ruth lay at Boaz's feet until the morning, but she got up before it was light enough for people to recognize each other. For Boaz had said, "No one must know that a woman was here at the threshing floor." Then Boaz said to her, "Bring your cloak and spread it out." He measured 6 scoops of barley into the cloak and placed it on her back. Then he returned to the town. That night kind of ends up being their second date, if you will here. He says, "Hey, Ruth, why don't you stay here and get some sleep?" Which I don't know how they slept, because she really likes him and he really likes her. I think that would have been tough to sleep in that moment. But every time I read this part of this passage, it reminds me when Kara and I met. We went to a Christian liberal arts school in Eastern Tennessee, and we met there. We would stay up like almost all night together. In our school there, the boys couldn't be in the girls' dorms and vice versa. There was like a 3-hour time period on Friday and Saturday nights you could do that, but the doors had to be open. RAs were all over the place, which is totally fine and great and wonderful. So you had to go hang out on the campus somewhere, or maybe go off site and to go hang out. So we would do that. We'd spend hours together, and we would just talk and talk. Probably a couple of kisses in there somewhere, but we'd do a whole lot of talking too. And we would talk and hang out, and then we'd look at our clocks and like, we got class in 2 hours. And so we got to go back and sleep, and we'd sleep for a couple hours. We'd go to class. Somehow we functioned, and I don't know how we did throughout the day. We'd do it again the next night. We've been married now for what, 20, almost 26 years. Now it's 8:30. It's like time to go to bed and go sleep, right? It's a totally different story these days. These two sleep, which is impressive, but I think it says a lot about both of them. Boaz and Ruth are people of character and integrity. In fact, if you notice, you go back, you see what Boaz says about Ruth. He calls her this virtuous woman, doesn't he? That term virtuous actually connects to Proverbs 31 when it talks about the virtuous wife. It's the exact same wording we have there with this passage here. Boaz says, "I want to protect your reputation because you deserve it." He says, "Stay here and leave early in the morning." Verse 16. Then when Ruth went back to her mother-in-law Naomi, or Naomi asked, "What happened, my daughter?" Ruth may have fallen asleep, but I don't think Naomi did. Like she was pretty excited. She had come up with this plan. She was waiting to hear what the news may be about this because she's trying to find Ruth this husband. So she sees Ruth, and as we see it here, it says, "What happened, my daughter?" She's really asking, "Are you getting married to this guy or not?" That's really this question that Naomi has. Look at the rest of verse 16. Ruth told Naomi everything Boaz had done for her, and she added, "He gave me these 6 scoops of barley and said, 'Don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed.'" Then Naomi said to her, "Just be patient, my daughter, until we hear what happens. The man won't rest until he has settled things today." Ruth tells Naomi everything, gives all of the details, and then adds in there, "Hey, by the way, he gave me this gift to give to you, this barley." Now, scholars say, based on the measurements that we're talking about here, it was probably about 80 or 90 pounds that Ruth carries back to Naomi, which means Ruth did a lot of CrossFit in her day, right? She was jacked, did a lot of weightlifting, because that's pretty heavy stuff for anybody. But there's a little more here. First, it's almost like Boaz is putting a down payment for Ruth. Now, I know that sounds weird, but in those days, they had a dowry system in place. And so the son's father would go to the daughter's father and say, "Hey, my son wants to marry your daughter, and how much would it cost for her to be a part of our family?" And so they would come up with this fee, this dowry, and you would pay that to the other family, and then she would come to be a part of your family. In some ways, that is exactly what we see happening here. Boaz is saying, "Hey, I'm all in. Here's sort of this down payment on this dowry that I'm giving to you, Naomi, because of the role you have in this, so that Ruth can come and be married to me." He's saying, "Hey, I'm serious. I'm serious about this offer." But it's also connected back to Ruth chapter 1. If you remember in Ruth chapter 1, Naomi is coming back home and she says, "I left here full, and now I'm coming back empty handed." Boaz is saying, "Hey, you're not empty handed anymore, Naomi. I'm going to care for Ruth if everything falls into place, but I'm also going to care for you." This chapter finishes with Naomi telling Ruth, Boaz will not sleep until he sees this whole thing through. He's going to make sure, he's going to do everything he can to make you his wife. And we'll talk about what happens in next week as we look at Ruth chapter 4. But what can we learn from this chapter 3? Well, I think one of the big lessons we can learn is that life is about taking risks. Like everything we do in life is about a risk. All the decisions we make in life, we are taking risks. The college that you are going to choose, the branch of the military that you go into, taking a new job, living in this area, they're all about taking risks. Investing in a 401k, buying a house, buying a car, the people that you decide to date, the teams that you pull for. I mean, all these decisions in life, they are risks that we take. But I want you to think about the risks that we take. I bet almost every single one of them is about your personal life. Then when you think about it, it's all about, what am I going to get out of this for me? But that's why we take risks, right? We're hoping something good will come from the risks that we take for us. And if we go back and we look at chapter 3, I think we sort of see this with Naomi, Ruth, and Boaz. Now, it's very easy to look at the 3 characters that we have in the story and to say, hey, Naomi is taking this risk because for her, she wants her life back. And Ruth is taking this risk because for her, she can start fresh with Boaz. And Boaz is taking this risk because here is this beautiful, wonderful woman who says she wants to be his wife. I think there's a little bit of truth in those 3 for these particular people in the story. But I also believe they are willing to risk their reputation, their questionable future that they don't know about yet, because they believe in something bigger than themselves. Think about it this way. In life, we can choose what's easy. We go back to chapter 1. Orpah is the other sister-in-law of Ruth. Naomi says, hey, Ruth and Orpah, you guys can go back to Moab if you want to. Orpah says, that's what I'm going to do. She wants to go back to what she knows, right? She wants to go back to the family that she knows and the people that she knows and the culture that she knows, everything that's familiar to her. She wants to go back to that life. Now, by the way, there's nothing in this book that says that was a bad decision that Orpah made. And if you read scholars, they say the exact same thing. Like, she didn't make a bad decision here. She made an easy decision here. For Ruth, she chooses another option. But for Ruth, she doesn't choose what's easy. She takes a risk and chooses what's hard. She chooses to follow Naomi back to Bethlehem. She chooses to become a part of Naomi's people, the people of Israel. She chooses to follow Naomi's God and let all of her gods go away. Go back to Ruth chapter 1, 16 and 17. Ruth says, don't ask me to leave you and turn back. Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Wherever you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord punish me severely if I allow anything but death to separate us. This is a reminder. These are very strong words that Ruth has for Naomi. She says, I will risk everything, Naomi, that is comfortable to me, that is easy for me, because there is something bigger. Right? Where you go, I go. Where you live, I will live. Where you die, I will die. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. And so she shares that she is willing to risk everything to be with Naomi. I think we also see this with Boaz. You remember what Ruth says? Spread the corner of your covering over me, for you are my family redeemer. She's willing to risk everything because she knows that there is something bigger for her. In Boaz, she sees someone who will care for her, someone who will love her. And she does. She sees him as this redeemer, that Boaz is there to save her. But what is it in her that allows her to do this? I think it's this little thing called faith. Go back to Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. Faith shows the reality of what we hope for. It is the evidence of things we cannot see. Like, I don't think we need to go to the dictionary to find a definition of faith, because I believe the writer of Hebrews does such an amazing job here in chapter 11, verse 1. It's such a great definition of faith. Like, there is hope in the future that we can't see right now, and that is this faith that we have. And we see that playing out in this story. Ruth has faith. She just doesn't know how this is going to play out for her and her future. Ruth has this faith in Naomi, and so that's why she decides to stay with Naomi and not go home. But doing this, she doesn't know what the future is going to look like for her. She just knows she wants to go where Naomi goes. Ruth has faith in Boaz. That's why she asks him to be the family redeemer. I mean, she honestly hardly knows him. She hardly knows who he is, but I think, like Naomi, she sees something in him that attracts her to Boaz, and she's willing to risk everything because of that. There's this faith in him, but I believe it really boils down that Ruth has faith in God. Think about the story again. We've talked about this a little bit. There's no miracles from God in this story. God's name is hardly even invoked in this story. If you look at Old Testament stories, so many times we see God intervening and doing these big things within people's lives. And yet we don't see that here in the story of Ruth. But in the story of Ruth, we see God's hand at work. And I believe we see this at work in Naomi and Boaz. And so for Ruth, she has this faith that there is something bigger for her than anything she has ever known in her life. And so she is willing to put her faith in that God that Naomi and Boaz follow for her own life. The question is, where do you put your faith in? What do you put your faith in? Is your faith in yourself? I got this. I can handle this. I'm good at this. How's that going for you, right? Because at some point we realize that we have this faith in ourselves, and And all we keep doing is bringing more famines into our life and more challenges and problems and issues and hardships. And we're trying to figure out, how do I get out of this dark place that I find myself in right now, based on the decisions that we've made in life, because our faith is in ourselves. But maybe we should put faith in a redeemer. Boaz is Ruth's redeemer in this story, and she puts her faith in him because she sees something in him. And I believe she sees God in him. And his role is to help her and to save her. And for you and me today, God sent Jesus to this earth to be our redeemer, to save us from our famines and our challenges and our tough times and our hardships in life and the decisions that we make on our own that bring about sin into our life. And we are sent to Jesus to be this redeemer, to save us, to give us hope. To say, no matter what we're going through in life, there is hope for today, there's hope for tomorrow, there's hope for eternity. But it does mean taking a risk. I love what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 16. If any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way, take up your cross, and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. That takes faith, right? That takes faith to follow Jesus. And it means that if we follow Jesus, we're going to take on incredible risks because of following Jesus. But in the end, we have this faith in this Redeemer. We have this faith in Jesus who saves us. And in that, it gives us this hope. It's risky, but that's the risk that we are called to take. And no matter the famines that come our way, we can know, because of Jesus, there is a God who loves us and cares for us and wants to take us under his wings, and in the end saves us because of Jesus. John 3:16. But this is how God loved the world. He gave his one and only Son, so that everyone who believes in him will not perish but have eternal life. But sometimes we forget verse 17. God sent his Son into the world, not to judge the world, but to save the world through him. God sent Jesus to save us. Are we willing to take the risks then to follow Jesus so that we can have this hope in our own lives? And so maybe you're here this morning and you're kind of starting this spiritual journey, and maybe for you, it's sort of taking a first step in it. We love to talk to people about taking that step of baptism. And if you're at that place, like, what is baptism? What does it look like? What is this step? How do I do it? Can I do it now? Do I have to wait? Man, we, again, would love to answer those questions. And you can ask them through the connection card in front of you, through the QR code, or if you have our app, you can go on there and do it through the connection card there. But maybe you're beyond that. Maybe you're at a place in your life where you've taken that step in your life and you're still trying to figure this out. Hey, it means taking risks. And we'd love to have that conversation with you too, as a staff member or leaders here. And you can let us know through those connection cards. And just understand that God has sent his incredible Son, Jesus, to redeem us, to save us from the famines in our life. To say, hey, I'm going to spread my wings around you and care for you and love you. But I'm inviting you to take this step with me.